She told you she loved you, but she kept one foot out the door. She said you were everything, but she kept looking past you. She smiled when you entered the room, but her eyes betrayed a question. Is this really it? You gave her presence, protection, patience, everything a man could offer when he has already decided who she is. But she had not decided who you were. Not truly, not fully, not finally. And so, while you celebrated the moments, while you held on to the words, while you saw a future written in certainty, she was writing two scripts. One where you became her plan, and another where you remained her fallback, her delay, her distraction from disappointment. You were plan B the entire time, and every sign was there. But you ignored them, because men do not see what they are unwilling to confront, especially when they believe love has already been secured. Let us name the crime clearly. She never chose you first. You were the man she turned to when the one she wanted vanished. You were the man she settled for when her rebellion failed, when her passion abandoned her, when her first vision of power and lust and domination crumbled into dust. You were the apology to her mother, the answer to her friends, the man she could explain finally. But you were not the one she longed for at midnight, not the one who made her question her pride, not the man she feared losing more than her own dignity. That man was already gone. And so she turned to you, not with hunger but with strategy, not with need but with calculation. And you mistook her peace for devotion, her presence for passion, her stability for love. You did not know that when a woman chooses security, it is rarely a reward. It is often a retreat. And here lies your blindness. You believed that being available was the same as being wanted, that doing everything right meant you had finally won. But love is not earned by virtue. It is surrendered by instinct. And she never surrendered, not to you. The one she surrenders to is the one she fears, the one who moves her without reassurance, the one who says less and controls more. That man was chosen. You were collected. You were useful, not irreplaceable, predictable, not dangerous. And a man who cannot make her afraid of loss cannot make her fall in love. She knew this, even if she never said it, especially because she never said it. What you need now is not comfort. What you need is clarity. You are not a victim. You are not cursed. You are simply unaware. And that ignorance has cost you time, power, presence, and her genuine desire. This video is not here to soothe you. It is here to expose the truth you refuse to name. The truth that haunts every man who has been passed over but kept around. You were good enough to stay, but not great enough to be chased. And every time she said you're different, what she meant was you're safe. Safe men are tolerated. Feared men are obeyed, and you were never obeyed. You were never feared. You were never chosen. You missed every sign. And now, I will show you what they were. She said you were everything she wanted, but she hesitated. She said you were her future, but her eyes were still fixed on her past. She called you her best friend, her safety, her peace. Words that men foolishly mistake for victory. But you were not chosen because of desire. You were selected out of despair. And a man who mistakes availability for admiration has already surrendered his throne before the war even begins. You must understand no woman ever makes her first choice silently. The one she desires truly, she runs toward with reckless certainty. The one she settles for, she approaches slowly, cautiously, calculating the risk. You were never her conquest. You were her contingency. And while you celebrated her words, you missed her delays. You mistook her affection for commitment, her compliments for conviction. But she had already played out your future in her mind. And it was a dull inheritance. She knew your value. She did not fear losing it. She knew your loyalty. She did not believe it could ever wound her. And so she tested you, not to see if you were strong, but to confirm that you were harmless. In politics, there is a breed of man who mistakes proximity to power for possession of it. The minor nobles, the second sons, the compliant courtiers, they are told they are essential but never allowed to command. They are given tokens, not sovereignty. And when the ruler falls, these men are discarded with him. So too are you. A woman may keep you near, speak to you often, lean on your kindness, but never invite you to lead. She may show you the mask of intimacy, but never offer the crown of choice. And here lies the great delusion of the well-meaning man. He believes that time spent equals value granted. He thinks that consistency earns love. He imagines that because she lets him stay, she must want him to rule. But the truth is this: when a woman does not fear your absence, she does not value your presence. And no amount of effort, no volume of affection, no flood of availability can raise a man in her eyes if she has already ranked him beneath her true ambition. Do you recall how often she told you about her past? About the man who changed her? The one who left her confused, breathless, unstable? She shared these stories not as wounds, but as warnings. She was telling you what power looked like in her world. She was reminding you in every whispered confession that her heart had once bowed to another. And in those moments, she was measuring you, measuring whether you could awaken the same terror, the same chaos, the same obsession. But you, like a diplomat in enemy territory, came bearing treaties. You offered comfort, predictability. You assured her you would never be like him. And in that assurance, you killed her curiosity. You told her without words that you would never disturb her sleep. And for a woman who has tasted conquest, peace is not a reward. It is a retreat. It is the choice made after all other armies have failed her. I once wrote of Cesare Borgia, who kept certain men close not because he valued their counsel, but because they were disposable. They were shields, not swords. Their loyalty was useful but never respected. And when their purpose was fulfilled, he discarded them without hesitation. You, in her story, are such a man. She kept you near to soften the edges of her disappointment. She let you carry her when her real desire collapsed. But she never truly looked at you with awe, never looked at you with hunger, never trembled at the thought of losing you. And a man who is not feared cannot rule, not in love, not in politics, not in war. The illusion of being chosen is the most dangerous lie a man can tell himself, because it keeps him blind to the truth, that he was only called forward when every other name had been crossed off the list. The first choice is never made with logic. It is made with instinct. It is the man she chooses when all reason tells her not to. It is the man she cannot control. The one she fears will disappear if she does not obey. The one who offers nothing except himself and dares her to risk everything. That is the man who is truly chosen. That is the man she mourns. And you were not him. You were the one she convinced herself to love. The one she introduced to her friends. The one her mother approved of. The one who did everything right, except awaken the ancient law of desire. And by the time you realize this, you will have already spent your time, your energy, your devotion, all on a woman who only remembered you when the fire she really wanted burned out. And so I ask you, do you still believe you were chosen? Or were you merely available at the right time? Do you still believe her words? Or can you finally see the strategy behind her slowness? Yo, you were not the man she ran to. You were the man she walked toward when the gates of passion had already been closed. You were not the one she disobeyed the world for. You were the one she obeyed the world with once her rebellion failed. This is not a condemnation. It is a recognition. For if you do not name your role clearly, you will never rise above it. The prince who believes he reigns when in fact he only governs by permission is the most pitiful ruler of all. Better to see yourself as you were, Plan B, than to live the rest of your life thinking you were Plan A in a game you never understood. You were never her ambition. You were her retreat. You did not fail because she lied. You failed because you refused to read the language she was fluent in: hesitation, distance, ambiguity. A woman never speaks only in words. She speaks with timing, with silence, with choices. She speaks when she delays replying to your message but responds instantly to another's. She speaks when she avoids making plans for next month, when she cancels for the third time, when she invites you into her body but not her future. You saw these signs. You felt them. You stood in their presence and smiled, because to acknowledge them would have meant confronting your own powerlessness, and a man without power will always cling to illusion. You believed she was cautious. You believed she was still healing. You told yourself her hesitation was noble, that she was protecting her heart. But she was not protecting herself. She was stalling for time, stalling to see if someone else would return, stalling to see if her first plan would recover. You were not her prize. You were her placeholder. And her pauses were not the signs of a wounded heart. They were the calculations of a woman still undecided. Men love to believe they are chosen. It flatters their ego. It sedates their ambition. But most men are not chosen. Most are accepted by default. She compares him to another and thinks, well, at least he won't hurt me. And so she keeps him close. She lets him love her. She accepts his gifts, his stability, his kindness. But she never bends. She never trembles. She never fears. And a love without fear is a love without consequence. Understand this: when a woman fears losing a man, she will move heaven and earth to keep him. She will not hesitate. She will not calculate. She will not delay. But when she feels safe, safe in your availability, safe in your unshakable loyalty, safe in the fact that you will stay no matter what, then she will treat you not like a treasure but like insurance. And insurance is not admired. It is kept, hidden, and only remembered when disaster strikes. Do you remember how she spoke about him? The one before you. Do you remember the way her voice cracked when she said his name? How her eyes changed when she remembered the chaos? That was not pain. That was reverence. That was power. You called him toxic. She called him unforgettable. You saw a man who wounded her. She saw a man who made her feel something she no longer finds in you. And when she compared you to him, and she did endlessly, you came up short. You were more stable, yes, more available, more reasonable, more gentle, but never more desired. She used words like finally, safe, and mature to describe you, but never irresistible, never dangerous, never necessary. And a man who is not necessary is disposable. Your role was to heal her from the chaos, but she never wanted to be healed. She wanted to be consumed again. And you offered her peace when she was still hungry for war. I wrote that men must learn to see beyond appearances. To rule, one must read not what is spoken, but what is implied. You failed because you accepted her performance at face value. You did not ask, why is she still unsure? Why does she speak of others with more passion than she gives me? Why do her actions trail behind her promises? Instead, you clung to the comfort of the spoken word. You heard, I care about you, and ignored, but I'm not ready. You heard, you're the best man I've ever met, and ignored, I just need more time. You heard the praise. You ignored the postponement. A prince who listens only to flattering courtiers soon finds his castle on fire. You too were flattered into blindness. You mistook delay for depth, distance for difficulty. Her indecision, you believed, was a sign of struggle. But it was a sign of strategy. She was waiting. Not for you, but to see if someone better would return. Let us speak clearly. When a woman wants you, truly wants you, there is no delay. She is decisive. She is bold. She is consistent. She brings you into her world. She does not keep you at the edge of it, dangling for approval. She does not pause. She pursues. The man she truly wants does not wait in uncertainty. He issues the uncertainty. She does not ask him if he is still interested. She begs to know if she still pleases him. That is the difference. That is power. And that is what you never possessed, because you were too eager to please, too desperate to stay, too afraid to leave. You played the role of the compliant servant while believing you were the chosen king. And kings who are not feared are never crowned. There is a principle I have always taught. A leader must study human nature without illusion. Men and women do not follow virtue. They follow advantage. They obey where they fear loss. They remain where they feel consequence. You provided neither. You made her feel safe to drift, to hesitate, to delay. You trained her to treat you as optional. And now, you suffer the fate of all optional men, waiting for her to decide, watching her test other doors while you keep yours wide open. And when she finally returns, if she ever does, it will not be with awe. It will be with entitlement. Because you never made her earn your loyalty. You gave it unconditionally, and what is freely given is never fully valued. So I ask again, did she choose you? Or did she merely settle for you when her preferred future collapsed? You know the answer. You've always known. But your pride, your comfort, your fear of being alone blinded you to it. You ignored the signs because they were too painful to face. But no man rules through denial. A ruler sees, names, confronts, and conquers. You were never her ambition. You were her retreat. And now you must decide, will you remain her refuge from failure, or become a man whose presence demands fear, whose loss would shatter her certainty, whose value cannot be postponed? You gave her peace. She wanted conquest. She said you made her feel safe, and you, in your naivety, believed this was a victory. But what you did not understand, what most men never understand, is that a woman does not dream of safety. Not when she is young, not when she is proud, not when her heart still believes she is meant for someone greater. A woman seeks safety only after she has been defeated. Only after the war has taken her flag, her pride, and her illusions. You were not the prize. You were the shelter she crawled into when the rain refused to stop. You offered her rest, but she was still dreaming of the battlefield. You offered her certainty, but she missed the chaos that once made her feel alive. And so, while you believed you were the answer, she was still mourning the question. You gave her peace, yes, but she wanted conquest. And that, my friend, is why she never looked at you with awe. A man who is not a threat to leave will never be seen as a ruler. And you, with your soft hands and softer words, were no threat. You spoke of building a future together, of sharing burdens, of creating a life of balance. Noble ideas, noble and useless. For a woman who has once been shaken by power, the calm becomes dull. You do not offer her fear, you offer her routine. You do not ignite her fire, you extinguish it. You place her on a pedestal of security, but she would rather be pulled to the ground by force, because peace without passion is merely exile with comfort, and you were her exile, her quiet, her emotional Switzerland, unarmed, respected, and irrelevant. History does not remember the cities that stayed neutral. History remembers the conquerors, the seducers, the men who made women betray logic. And make no mistake, women are not loyal to goodness. They are loyal to gravity. They fall, not by persuasion, but by pull. You did not pull her. You patted her fall. And now you sit beside her like a diplomat negotiating the terms of affection, hoping your decency will inspire desire. But it will not. For desire cannot be reasoned into existence. It is summoned by dominance, not courtesy. By confidence, not consolation. She thanked you for being there. She praised your patience, but she never lost sleep wondering if you might disappear. That alone tells you everything. I once served the Florentine Republic in her time of need. She turned to me not when she was thriving, but when she was drowning, when the wolves were at the door, when the papacy pressed her throat, when the mercenaries proved faithless. Only then did Florence seek me. I was her safety, her planner, her cunning shield against chaos. And I served her well. I restored order. I forged alliances. I brought victory. But when the peace returned, she discarded me. She did not love the man who saved her. She missed the tyrants who excited her. Florence did not want stability. She wanted spectacle. And you are now the same. You are the stability she clings to while broken, but she dreams of someone else while lying next to you. Understand this truth. If she comes to you after her heart has been broken, you are not her desire. You are her recovery plan. She does not seek to build with you. She seeks to be rebuilt through you. And once she is healed, once her strength returns, so too will her ambition. And her ambition was never about you. It was always about something larger, more dangerous, more unpredictable. You were chosen not because you are rare, but because you are replaceable. Because your peace is easy. Because you ask for little and offer much. And in the cold arithmetic of power, that is a poor trade. She does not value what she did not have to fight for. She does not dream of a man who would never abandon her. She dreams of the one she had to chase to keep. This is why you are forgotten even while you are still present. She walks beside you. She shares meals with you. She replies to your messages, but her spirit is elsewhere. Her mind is replaying another voice, another man, another moment of madness that you could never replicate. Not because you are less, but because you are stable. And stability is not irresistible. It is convenient. It is useful. But it is not unforgettable. You are the man she trusts, not the man she worships. And the difference between trust and worship is the difference between being kept and being desired. When she tells you she finally feels calm with you, understand what she truly means. She is no longer afraid, not of losing you, not of disobeying you, not of disappointing you. She feels calm because your presence no longer moves her. And yet you celebrate this. You call it progress. You believe her comfort is proof of depth. But in love, comfort without urgency is death. If she does not fear your absence, she will never value your presence. And if she does not value your presence, then your peace is not peace, it is sedation. You were never the storm. You were the shelter. And no woman builds temples to the shelter. She worships the storm even as she curses it. You gave her calm. She needed conquest. You offered her relief. She wanted resurrection. You were the man who could love her forever, yes, but only because she never gave you a reason to stop. And that is the man a woman forgets first. You stood by her side like a loyal knight, but she longed for the king who made her kneel. She smiled at your loyalty, but she obeyed the man who made her uncertain. You gave her certainty, and she gave you comfort in return, but not submission, not devotion, not the sacred form of surrender that only power commands. You were never her master. You were her mirror, someone who reflected what she thought she needed after being burned. But a mirror is not obeyed. It is looked into and then set aside. She told you she appreciated you. She thanked you for being consistent. She praised your patience, your warmth, your understanding. But none of those virtues made her tremble. None made her obey. And a woman who does not obey is a woman who does not feel the presence of true power. She does not kneel before praise. She kneels before authority. You, in your desperate attempt to be adored, removed the very thing that would have made her stay. Your edge, your indifference, your willingness to walk away and let her feel the cold. What moves the female soul is not affirmation. It is the fear of loss, the pressure of consequence, the awareness that the man she wants may vanish if she falters. This is the ancient root of obedience, the same root from which all rulers have drawn their strength. I once told a cardinal that it is better for a prince to be feared than loved if he cannot be both. Why? Because love is a fragile bond, easily broken when self-interest interferes. But fear leaves an imprint. Fear makes a subject think twice before disobedience. Fear carves its presence into memory. And so it is in power, and so it is in love. A woman may love a man, but unless she fears losing him, she will not obey him. And obedience, not in the crude sense of domination, but in the sacred form of allegiance, is the highest form of female loyalty. You believed she would love you more if you showed her that nothing she did could make you leave. But in doing so, you removed the very incentive she had to stay. She tested your patience, and you passed. She withheld affection, and you persisted. She gave less and less, and you gave more and more. And slowly, without even realizing it, you began to teach her that your love required nothing. No commitment, no transformation, no urgency. And what costs nothing is respected by no one. She saw your loyalty not as a treasure, but as a weakness. She saw your forgiveness not as nobility, but as desperation. And the more she sensed your fear of losing her, the less she feared losing you. You thought love was about removing uncertainty, about making her feel safe. But let me tell you, certainty is the death of awe. Certainty is what a woman craves only after she has been exhausted by fire. You gave her safety when she was still looking for a man who could unsettle her soul. The man she obeyed, the man she still remembers, the man who lives rent-free in the back of her mind. He was not more loving than you. He was not more stable. But he made her question her own value. He made her chase. He made her think. And in that tension, in that glorious unease, she felt alive. You tried to win her with comfort. But the man she obeyed made her sweat. You gave her clarity, he gave her crisis, and yet it is him she thinks about when she is alone. There is a reason why women stay longer with men who make them feel uncertain. Because uncertainty is the shadow of power. She never knew if he'd return her call, never knew what his silence meant, never knew if today was the day he would vanish. And in that not knowing, her mind began to orbit him. That is how power is built, not by force but by psychological gravity. And once a woman begins to orbit you, she will not leave, because her entire emotional system is now calibrated around your presence. But you were always there, always ready, always available. And so, her emotions never needed to calibrate. You were not the sun she rotated around. You were the moon, present, soft, harmless, forgettable. The man she obeyed left her on red. The man she obeyed disappeared for weeks. The man she obeyed made her question her worth. You called him cruel. She called him unforgettable. You condemned his behavior. But her body still remembers his silence, still remembers the thrill of uncertainty, the anticipation, the ache. That is power, not abuse. Power. And if you cannot tell the difference, you will always be the man who gets thanked but never desired. You will always be the man she turns to for advice about how to win the man she actually wants. You thought your consistency would win her over. But consistency without consequence is invisible. She smiled at your loyalty. She applauded it. But she never obeyed it. She never changed for you, never fought for you, never corrected herself to keep you. Because she knew with perfect confidence that you were not going anywhere, that you would wait, that you would stay, that you would forgive anything. And so she gave you less and less until you became the man she talked to when she was bored, the man who helped her move apartments, the man who bought her groceries when she was sick, the man she slept with to pass the time, but never the man who moved her will. I tell you now, the woman who truly respects you is the woman who fears disappointing you. She is the woman who asks, "Are you angry with me?" She is the woman who wants your approval, not because she is weak, but because she senses your power. When a woman fears losing you, she will listen more closely. She will speak more carefully. She will invest, initiate, protect. That is the obedience of respect. And you never had it. Because you gave her everything. And what is given without demand is discarded without ceremony. You believed you were showing her your love, but what you showed her was your fear. Fear of being alone, fear of conflict, fear of walking away, and fear in a man is poison. The man she obeyed never apologized for his standards, never softened his expectations, never explained himself to be understood. He simply lived by a code that said, "I do not chase, I do not beg, I do not stay where I am not respected." And she obeyed him, not because he punished her, but because she sensed that he didn't need her. And that, more than anything, made her need him. So do not ask yourself now whether she loves you. That is irrelevant. Ask instead, does she obey me? Does she change for me? Does she fear losing me? If the answer is no, then your love is hollow. Your presence is taken for granted. Your value has been negotiated to zero. You are not the man she orbits. You are the man she leans on. And leaning is not worship. It is dependence. It is habit. And it can be replaced at any moment by something that demands more and gives less. That is the law of power. That is the law of love. That is the law you ignored. She used you gently, but she used you nonetheless. You think she was kind. You think she cared. You think that because she smiled, because she checked in, because she said, "You're such a good man," that her actions were tender. But I will tell you the truth. Her cruelty was precise. Her manipulation was elegant. You were not her victim. You were her asset. And while she wrapped her silence in softness, while she laced her indecision in compliments, she was bleeding you in slow intervals. Not enough to make you run. Not enough to trigger alarm. Just enough to keep you invested. Just enough to keep you circling the drain of your own dignity. This is the cruelty you never understood. Cruelty in velvet gloves. And it is the most effective kind. She did not strike you. She did not scream. She did not abandon you with malice. She delayed. She postponed. She explained her distance with pretty phrases. "I just need time. I'm figuring things out. I'm not ready, but I care deeply." These are not confessions. These are weapons. They keep a man hoping while draining his power. Because hope, when unjustified, is a leash. And she knew exactly how much slack to give you. Enough to keep you from breaking. Never enough to let you breathe. This was not emotional confusion. It was political management. You were not her partner. You were her plan of stability. A contingency asset in case the man she truly wanted failed to return. Cruelty, as I wrote, can be well used. The prince who must be feared should strike once and with precision. His subjects will remember his severity but respect his finality. But cruelty repeated, cruelty without purpose, cruelty extended over time. That is the cruelty that breeds contempt. And this is what she did to you. Not from rage, but from utility. She kept you close. She let you invest. But she never made a choice. Her cruelty was not the sword. It was the slow poison of perpetual indecision. And you drank it willingly, mistaking it for love. She never defined the relationship, and you never demanded that she did. You tolerated the gray zone because you feared that pushing would lead to loss. But here is the paradox of power. What you fail to demand will be withheld indefinitely. She didn't give you clarity because you taught her that she didn't have to. You taught her that you would show up regardless, that you would be there regardless, that you would stay in line, asking no questions, making no threats, and tolerating half-love like a man who has forgotten what full love feels like. This is how she kept you. By giving you breadcrumbs wrapped in gold leaf. Every once in a while, she'd initiate a kiss. She'd send a photo. She'd talk about the future in vague terms. Just enough to keep your loyalty from collapsing. Just enough to reward you for your patience. But never enough to commit. Never enough to choose. Never enough to submit. And this strategy, this slow glacial cruelty, is the hallmark of someone who is not lost, not confused, but calculating. She needed time. Not for herself. For another man to make up his mind. She kept you in orbit while she waited for a better offer to materialize. And if it did, she would have left you in silence, with a thank you text and a whisper of regret. You do not see it yet, but everything she withheld was a message. Her avoidance of labels, her refusal to introduce you, her delayed responses, her last-minute cancellations. These were not oversights, these were tests. Tests you kept failing by staying, by accommodating, by forgiving. She watched you adapt to her minimal investment and concluded, this man requires nothing to remain. And a man who requires nothing will be given nothing. Because power in love, as in politics, is maintained through consequence. You gave her no consequence, and so she gave you no change. You called it patience. You called it love. You believed that by proving yourself she would finally choose you. But you misunderstood the arena you were in. You were not building something. You were being measured. She was watching how far you would go without receiving, watching how long you would wait without results, watching how much of yourself you would give away before you even realized you were being drained. And when she learned that you would not stop yourself, she knew she never had to. That is how a man becomes Plan B, not through betrayal, but through complicity in his own erasure. Do you recall how she reacted when you pulled back, if even slightly? Panic, rage, guilt-laced messages. I didn't realize you felt that way. You mean so much to me. These are not signs of love. These are the tools of retention. You were about to walk off the board, and she needed her pawn to stay in place. Not because she loved you, but because she needed the comfort of knowing you were still there if all else failed. You were her backup plan, and the cruelty of it is not that she used you. The cruelty is that she did so while wearing the mask of sincerity, that she convinced you it was all real, that she never admitted the truth until the man she actually wanted returned, and you were dismissed with diplomatic grace. This is why I never trusted appearances, why I taught rulers to study actions, not words. A subject who praises your name but withholds taxes is not loyal. A lover who praises your heart but withholds commitment is not sincere. Loyalty is sacrifice, devotion is choice. And she never sacrificed, she never chose. She floated, she delayed, and you, poor obedient servant that you were, interpreted this as virtue. Now you sit with her memory and ask yourself if she was evil. She was not. She was strategic. She used your predictability against you. She knew that your fear of being alone would keep you docile. She understood that your need to be loved made you easy to manage. You were never dangerous to her. And a man who poses no threat to leave will always be handled, never pursued. So what will you do now? Continue to justify her hesitation? Pretend her cruelty was innocence? Or will you finally see the pattern? The cold precision of how she fed you just enough to keep you from waking up. She did not love you. She preserved you. Until her real desire arrived, and when it did, she vanished, leaving you with fragments, silence, and the hollow ache of a man who was never truly chosen. That is the cruelty you must name. That is the truth you must swallow. Not to hate her, but to never again play the role of the forgotten, the tolerated, the man who waits silently to be chosen by someone who already decided he wouldn't be. She never feared losing you, because you feared losing her. You believed love was about showing her you'd never leave, but what you failed to realize is that she was never afraid you would. That certainty, that stability, that unshakable presence you thought would make her feel secure, it only made you invisible. She did not choose you because she knew she already had you. There was no pursuit, no risk, no sense of potential loss, and no woman treasures what she cannot lose. You gave her your devotion unconditionally. You gave her your time, your heart, your forgiveness, your entire emotional estate, and in doing so, you declared without words, "You don't have to earn me." That is not power. That is surrender. That is what made you irrelevant in her world of power dynamics and emotional calculus. You were not a threat to her because you refused to threaten departure. You feared the silence too much. And so she gave you silence often, and this is the root of your failure. Not that you were weak, but that your strength was offered too early, too cheaply, too eagerly. You wanted her so badly you forfeited the very thing that would have made her respect you. Your willingness to walk away. A man who does not fear loss can make others fear it. But you, afraid of confrontation, afraid of absence, afraid of being alone, you made her your center and expected her to orbit you. It does not work like this. The body with the strongest gravitational pull determines the orbits. And she sensed from the first moment that you would bend to her choices, forgive her delays, absorb her inconsistencies. She never saw you as a fixed point in the sky. You were a satellite, predictable, passive, spinning endlessly around a desire that never looked back. Let me remind you of a principle from the cold laws of statecraft. If a prince does not command fear, he invites betrayal. I do not speak of violence, but of the deeper psychological fear that keeps a subject obedient. A ruler who is loved but not feared is only safe as long as nothing better appears. And once it does, the love that once anchored him is replaced by ambition. So too, with you. She liked you, even cared for you. But she did not fear losing you. And because she did not fear losing you, she felt no urgency to change, no reason to obey, no incentive to elevate your role. You were consistent but replaceable. You were loyal but interchangeable. And in the modern market of attention and affection, a man who does not make himself scarce becomes background noise. You may say, but I was always good to her. And that is the tragedy, because in your goodness you erased all consequences. You responded immediately. You never withheld. You allowed her to speak in circles, act in contradiction, disappear and return. And you stood there open-armed, begging for clarity while accepting confusion. She did not take you seriously because you made yourself too available to take seriously. She knew that no matter what she did, no matter how little she gave, you would still be there, heart in hand, voice steady, eyes hopeful. She did not value your presence. She counted on it. And what we count on, we do not honor. We use it, we lean on it, we forget it. You think love is about persistence, but true power in love lies in indifference. The man she desires most is not the one who tries hardest. It is the one who could leave, the one who demands excellence, the one whose silence is not a bluff, but a reality. A man who can disappear without warning, without explanation. That man creates reverence. That man creates movement. That man changes her behavior, not through anger, but through absence. You, on the other hand, were always explaining, always reminding her how much you cared, always promising that you would never leave. And the more you did, the less she felt she needed to act. Think back. The one she obsessed over, the one she chased, the one she still thinks about. He was not better than you. He was not more moral, not more devoted. But he made her feel uncertain. His time was not guaranteed. His affection was not predictable. He made her earn responses he withheld without apology. He did not explain himself. He disappeared. And she, trained in a world of male softness, found herself disarmed by his distance. That man became the axis of her desire, not because he gave more, but because he gave nothing until it was deserved. You gave everything in the beginning. And she, being human, respected you accordingly. This is the cold truth. When a woman believes you will stay regardless, she begins to test that belief. She pulls back. She grows cold. She delays her replies. She asks for space. And you, thinking that giving her more will bring her closer, begin to offer even more. You write long messages. You show up uninvited. You accept conditions you once swore you never would. You negotiate your standards just to keep her attention, and with every concession, with every act of fear, you become less of a man and more of a utility. She may still talk to you, she may still sleep with you, but she no longer sees you, not as a ruler, not as someone to obey. The man she respects is the one who leaves without warning the moment his value is unrecognized, the one who does not ask to be chosen. He chooses himself and vanishes. And in his absence, she remembers what presence means. He does not threaten. He does not beg. He simply ends the game. You, terrified of the silence, keep playing, even when the rules keep changing, even when the prize is no longer worth winning, even when it's clear you're not playing for love but for survival. So I ask you now, have you ever made her fear losing you? Have you ever walked away when your needs were ignored? Have you ever gone silent not out of manipulation but out of principle? If not, then you were never a threat. You were her fallback, her comfort zone, her emotional airbag when the crash came, and she never feared losing you because you never gave her a reason to. And until you do, until you become the man who can vanish without apology, without announcement, she will never truly see you. She will keep you, use you, praise you, but she will not obey you, because only power commands obedience. And you, by fearing her absence more than she feared yours, surrendered the throne before you ever knew there was one. When her first choice failed, she remembered you, but only as a convenience. It happened just as you hoped it would. She came back. The message was sudden, sweet, deceptively warm. Hey, stranger, I was thinking about you. How have you been? And in your hunger, you mistook that for redemption. You thought it was the sign you had waited for, the reward for your patience, the signal that finally, she realized your worth. But she did not return because she saw your value. She returned because her plan collapsed. The man she wanted did not stay. The danger she once glorified turned into silence. The chaos she mistook for passion ended in abandonment, and in the debris of her delusion she remembered you, not as her beloved but as her insurance, not as the man who moved her soul but as the man who never moved away. When a woman returns after choosing someone else, it is not an act of love, it is a confession of failure. She is not coming back because she changed. She is coming back because he didn't. And now, she hopes that the throne she once abandoned is still vacant, that the servant she once ignored still waits, that the man who made himself her safe haven has not grown a spine, has not closed the door, has not transformed into something she now must earn. She returns because you were too easy to forget, and therefore too easy to reclaim. But know this, when you accept her back without condition, without demand, without forcing her to reckon with her own rejection, you do not win. You simply confirm your role. History is full of such returns. Weak states abandoned by their powerful allies crawl back to the weaker ones they once dismissed. Florence, spurned by France, turned to Spain when its castles burned. But this is not loyalty, it is logistics. And what is chosen for convenience can never command devotion. She came back because the man she risked it all for made her bleed. And now she seeks refuge. She seeks peace. She seeks you. But not as a lover, not as a ruler, not as a man she fears. You are no longer a contender. You are a hospital bed, temporary, helpful, forgettable once healing arrives. Do not be deceived by her softness upon returning. A woman who regrets her choice does not return with humility. She returns with calculation. She measures how much damage you took. She tests to see if the door still opens the same way. And when she finds it does, she does not admire you, she pities you. For no man with true value remains idle, unguarded, and emotionally available after public rejection. The man of power has consequences. You had none. She left you, returned, and found you just as she left you, eager, grateful, obedient. And in that moment she confirms what she suspected all along, that you are not the man she would fight to keep. You are the man she can always return to, like a closet where old coats are kept. And what happens next is inevitable. Once she has healed, once her confidence returns, once her wounds are stitched together by your affection, she will leave again. Not with drama, not with violence, but with the quiet indifference reserved for furniture being moved out of a room. Because you were not a destination, you were a detour, a rest stop on the road back to her ambition. And in that brief visit you gave her everything once again. Your heart, your patience, your pride. You gave it because you still believed you were her prize, but you were not. You were her convenience, her post-trauma recovery unit, her emotional reset. What she needed, what she hoped for, was a man who had changed, a man who, in her absence, had become dangerous, a man who now required sacrifice, who now made her question herself, who made her earn her place. But when she saw that you were still the same, still wide-eyed and grateful, she realized there was nothing left to gain, nothing left to conquer. She did not leave this time because she was wounded. She left because she was bored, and nothing kills feminine desire faster than a man who has no price. And so I ask you, when she came back, did you make her pay? Did you demand anything? Or did you, like the ever-loyal servant, rush to serve again, thinking your moment had come? If you did, then understand this. You were never loved. You were never wanted. You were only convenient. And a man who accepts that role, no matter how gently she smiles, is not her king. He is her fool. What you mistook for love was leverage. What you gave her was obedience, not challenge. Now you see it. You weren't overlooked. You were preserved, kept warm like a soldier in reserve, brought out only when the war was already lost. You were her contingency, her escape hatch, her emotional pension. And the tragedy is not that she used you. That is to be expected in the court of power. The tragedy is that you volunteered for it. You did not demand to be chosen. You waited. You hoped. You gave everything except what commands respect. Consequence. What you mistook for loyalty was submission. What you believed was patience was passivity. You made her God, and in doing so, you made yourself soil. Something to walk on. Something to land on. Something beneath. A woman, like a subject, must feel the presence of your standards before she will ever feel the weight of your love. You gave her the second without the first. You were generous with your peace. But you never made her earn your forgiveness. You offered your future, but you never forced her to prove she could protect it. You bowed before a throne you imagined she sat upon, all while never realizing that you were the throne. But thrones without guards are easily occupied. You were occupied and then replaced. So now I tell you this. If you were Plan B, it is because you made yourself available for that role. Not once, but every day. With every unanswered message forgiven. With every boundary unspoken. With every return you welcomed like a fool opening his gates to an enemy army waving white flags. You did not rule. You begged. And begging is the opposite of power. What must you do now? Withdraw your favor. Reclaim your mystery. Restore the price of your presence. Not through vengeance. Through silence. Through distance. Through the icy discipline of a man who has remembered what he is worth. She must no longer assume you are waiting. She must no longer know if you are watching. She must be made to wonder. Not if she can have you back, but if she ever had you at all. So if you gave her everything but never made her earn it, comment, I gave her everything except control. Let the world know that your patience has ended, that your clarity has returned, that you will not be Plan B in a game where the rules were written to keep you weak, and subscribe, not to be comforted, but to learn how to rule.